Hey guys, it's me, Rich. Look, California just passed a law to criminalize the act of finding government fraud, not committing it. That's absurd. Finding it. Your tax dollars are funding organizations that may not even exist. And if you try to film them, you could end up in handcuffs now. But what you'll soon find out if you stick with me till the end of this is that the bill wasn't written by accident. It was written to protect specific people. And the woman who wrote it is married to California's top law enforcement official. Isn't that something? We're going to show you exactly what's happening, who Nick Shirley is, why powerful people are terrified of him, and what Assembly Bill 2624 actually does. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to RPW Media, where you and I are the antidote to the daily onslaught of radical woke Marxist propaganda. So let's talk about California. And I want you to pay special attention to this one because it deserves your full attention. You've got a state that has become, and I think most reasonable people would agree, a fairly reliable symbol of what government mismanagement looks like when left completely unchecked by the left. And now that state, the great state of California, has developed a very specific strategy for dealing with its fraud problem. Their strategy is not to stop the fraud. It is to stop the people who find it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That sounds too crazy to be real, Rich. I promise you it's real, and I promise you it's worse than it sounds. But here's the thing. This isn't even new. Washington State tried something almost identical not that long ago. They only ran out of time before they could finish the job, but California, it isn't stopping short at all. And the bill at the center of this story has picked up a nickname that's worth knowing. People are calling it, and I ain't making this stuff up, the Stop Nick Shirley Bill. We all know Nick Shirley, right? Which should immediately make you ask, why are powerful people in multiple states trying to legislate Nick Shirley out of existence? Well, let's start there. Nick Shirley does something that used to be considered journalism, basic old-fashioned journalism. He shows up on the scene. He goes to the actual address. He knocks on the actual door, turns on a camera, and shares what he finds with the public so they can draw their own conclusions. In California, he focused on hospice care fraud. He visited locations registered with the state as licensed hospice facilities. Remember that. Registered with the state as licensed hospice facilities. Okay. What he found were crumbling buildings supposedly operating as home to dozens of providers with luxury vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars parked right out front. In Minnesota, he showed up at daycare centers that collected government funding, but they didn't have a single child, a toy, a staff, nothing. There was nothing visible on the property, just a sign outside. Remember that Quality Learning Center? They didn't even care about the spelling. They were just raking it in of your and my tax dollars. Now, this is the part of the story where things get a little bit interesting. The moment Shirley's California footage started circulating, Gavin Newsom's office faced a pretty obvious choice. Any government that takes itself seriously would say, quote, "This is serious. We'll look into it," end quote. Instead, and I want you to really absorb this, they produced memes. One of them showed Shirley surrounded by cameras with the text that said, "Hey, can I see your kids?" as if he's some kind of child predator, because he kept going up to facilities that said that they had children in there for daycare, and they didn't. They were just sucking up the money from the government. Your and my money, federal tax dollars. The goal was to paint him as the predator rather than a single question about where the money was going. Think about that. Government officials use taxpayer resources to run a social media smear campaign against a guy who knocked on doors and filmed what he found. It's not a response, guys. That looks like they're panicking. The San Francisco Chronicle contributed a fact check claiming his reporting was exaggerated. Really? Pointing out that not all the hospices sharing an address were billing the state directly. Really? This was printed while Shirley's work was already producing criminal arrests. Then, and this is where things get good, federal agents showed up with search warrants. Yeah. And suddenly, the entire tone from Sacramento shifted in about 48 hours. Gavin Newsom got on X and announced that California is again leading the charge against large-scale identity theft and hospice fraud. This is what Democrats do all the time. They create all these crazy, unmanaged problems. Then when they start to affect too many people the wrong way and eyes start getting on it, they stand up and they say, look, we're the only ones that can fix this. He was taking credit for action against 14 providers who had billed Medi-Cal using stolen identities for hospice services that never existed. And these people want you to put them in power in November. Guys, the party of fraud is trying to tell you they are the better choice than the Republicans. The people who are robbing you of your hard-earned tax dollars and giving it mostly to people who never earned it, they don't appreciate it, and they shouldn't even be here for the most part. They want you to put them in charge of everything. I mean, good Lord, California is again leading the charge. That's what Gavin Newsom wants you to believe. A state that's genuinely leading the charge against fraud doesn't end up with fraud operating at an industrial scale inside its own borders. The state wasn't leading anything. A guy with a camera and a willingness to knock on doors was. Newsom's team ridiculed him, tried to paint him as a predator, and then took credit for the results he produced. That takes a particular kind of balls, if you ask me. Now, let's talk about the bill itself, because this is where things go from infuriating to actually alarming. AB 2624 carries the official title, Privacy for Immigration Support Services Providers Act. Are you kidding me? Good Lord. What it actually does is build an address confidentiality program around designated immigrant support services providers and everyone who works with them. Organizations receiving public funding will receive protections that look remarkably like what the federal government offers to witnesses in organized crime cases. Publishing the protected addresses or identifying the people enrolled in this program would be treated as a criminal act. These are the people that want you to vote for them. The bill keeps going from there. It reaches into what ordinary people and journalists, real journalists, are allowed to post online about these facilities. The text says that a person, business, or association shall not knowingly publicly post or publicly display, disclose, or distribute on the internet the personal information or image of any designated immigration support services provider, employee, or volunteer. I mean, good Lord, when you read it carefully, I mean, a journalist standing outside one of these buildings with the camera could be committing a crime. First Amendment, anyone? A citizen walking up to the entrance and asking a question on video could be committing a crime. Freedom of the press? But wait. Beyond the criminal exposure, if anyone enrolled in the program decides to file a lawsuit, the bill hands them that ability directly. So the people committing fraud could sue you for catching them. A journalist who fights back and wins in court could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees getting there. None of that is accidental. The entire architecture of the bill is designed to make the financial cost of investigation so painful that most people will quietly decide it isn't worth the trouble. That's not legislation, guys. That's building a wall. Now, here's where the story goes from infuriating to genuinely strange. The assemblywoman who introduced AB 2624 is Mia Bont, or Maya Bont. Her husband is Rob Bont, the Attorney General of California. The wife of the Attorney General, the top law enforcement officer in the state of California, is putting up a bill that will make it a crime to investigate fraud. The same Rob Bont who stood alongside Newsom ridiculing Nick Shirley's journalism before smoothly repositioning himself as the man responsible for the resulting arrests. Are you kidding me? The woman writing the bill to protect those organizations is married to the state's top law enforcement official who spent time publicly mocking a guy who exposed the fraud before taking credit for cleaning it up. You can't make this up. Now, there's a Republican assemblyman named Carl DiMaio, and he used a committee hearing to push Bont on the specific scope of the bill's language. And he asked directly whether the prohibition on posting images of designated immigration support services providers would reach the fraud investigations that Shirley had conducted. You get that? In other words, he's saying, so a journalist that actually uncovers real fraud, is that going to be in there? Is he going to be charged with a crime? Now, in the end, her answer was considerably wandered. She said, I acknowledged, just to clarify, because you were mischaracterizing what I supposedly acknowledged. What I acknowledged was that under the scenario that you offered, that individuals who are investigating were journalists, this bill has not ensures that we protect lawful free speech and opportunity of criticism. So she eventually landed on the suggestion that the bill simply wouldn't touch bona fide journalists. In other words, Nick Shirley's not a bona fide journalist. What is a bona fide journalist? The First Amendment doesn't even say. Here's where that's completely hollow assurance. California's own government team put Nick Shirley in a meme designed to make people think he was a child predator. So there you go. Now, Washington State is spending public money on litigation specifically to argue that journalists, including Shirley and colleagues Jonathan Cho and Ari Hoffman, don't qualify as legitimate press. Are you kidding me? If that's the operating definition of bona fide journalist among these officials, Shirley never had a chance of qualifying. The bill was built around stopping people exactly like him, because they know that the regular fake news is never going to come down on them for fraud, right? There's one more thing worth saying plainly, and I think it might be the most revealing part of this whole story. Democrats across blue states have spent months demanding that ICE agents remove their masks during enforcement operations, right? Washington State turned that demand into law. They made a freaking law about it. Even though all of their little towns' SWAT teams, they all wear the masks for the same reason, because they want to protect themselves from being doxxed so that their families don't get assaulted. But for some reason, ICE agents are different, right? Their stated concern is that masked federal agents resemble an authoritarian force operating without accountability. There's a word for that. It's bullshit. Meanwhile, those same unmasked ICE agents are being doxxed. I mean, think about it. Family photos are going, everything. People connected to these officers are in real danger. Do you think they care? No, they don't care. When Assemblywoman Bont was asked about this directly, she justified her bill by explaining that it ensures that we have an opportunity when people are being harassed, doxxed, subjected to violence, to have the ability to be able to protect themselves. Are you kidding me? I mean, take your time with that one. She described with precision the exact situation ICE agents are living in right now. The language fits perfectly. The concern, however, does not extend to them. The bill's protections flow to taxpayer-funded organizations under active fraud investigation. Federal law enforcement, whose personal information is being spread online by activists, don't receive any consideration at all. It's like alternate universe time. That gap tells you exactly what this bill is for. It has nothing to do with shielding vulnerable people from harassment. It exists to put a wall around fraud that's already been exposed. Wear down the journalists willing to expose more of it and send a clear message to anyone thinking about picking up a camera and following Nick Shirley's example. Look, here's the bottom line. Shirley knocked on doors. He filmed what he found. People got arrested. And the government's response, rather than say, thank you, we will fix this. No, it was to write a law making it illegal to knock on those same doors in the future. But there's a bright side. There's always a bright side. It is America, right? You know what that kind of response means, right? It means it worked. The fraud was real. The exposure was real. And the arrests were real. And the people who don't want it to happen again are now out in the open, writing bills with their names on them and their party, little D next to it, giving wandering answers in committee hearings and handing us a roadmap of exactly who they're trying to protect. When they start legislating against accountability, that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. All right, so tell me what you think about this in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.